Welcome and welcome back to the Marketing Made Inclusive podcast. I am your host, Joyann. Boys, thank you so much for joining me. And we have this week another amazing guest. We have Crystal J. Carter. Now, I've known Crystal for a while, and the J in your name is new, isn't it?
Dude, I only put the J in there so people can find me on LinkedIn. Like, there's lots of other people called Crystal Carter on LinkedIn, and like it just made it easier for people to find me. That's all. That's what I put it in there.
The J is. But
like
you rank higher than the actress Crystal Carter.
Yes. Because that's deliberate. Like, I deliberately set out to be the number one Crystal Carter. I also so just in case anyone's wondering, I did attend the Renaissance World Tour on the Cardiff leg of the tour. Blue Ivy did not show up, nor did Megan Thee Stallion or Diana Ross. However, we had a good time. Anyway, when they played like, everybody say, hey, this is Carter. And I was like, they're talking to me. It's me. They're all talking to me. No, they're not talking to me.
They were not. I was also there. And funny, we were in the same stadium.
You were in Cardiff?
Yeah, I went to the Cardiff
Beyonce.
Why
did we not coordinate?
Beyonce it blindsides us, you know?
I wore these glasses, which are the same that she wears in Mood Forever. I also had like a whole outfit. I could send you like the whole thing. Like it was like a whole thing.
For anyone listening, to go to the YouTube to see the glasses.
The glasses are perfect. Like honestly, like I showed everybody a picture. I was like, look at Beyonce, look at me, look at Beyonce, look at me. And they're like, oh my God, you nailed it. This is basically when I walked to my seat, people clapped. That's how good my outfit was. Like, I'm not lying. Put that on your podcast. No. Okay.
Other than an amazing Beyonce outfit, Crystal's also is the head of SEO Wow. The head of SEO communications at Wix, one of the website platforms that I have used.
Indeed. That is precisely. So sometimes, like living in England, I say I work at Wix and people are like, oh, my kitchen. And I'm like, nope. I know nothing about DIY. Not that Wix. WIX Wix. That is what we do. And I slay all day at the Wix.
You slay all day at Wix. I feel guilty because all our websites are built on Squarespace, but...
Yeah, I guess you can be forgiven. Like, the way I say it is, like we offer some great resources for folks to get started on SEO. We offer some great, really easily accessible design resources. So, choose what's best for you. It's probably Wix, but choose what's best for you.
What's best for you is probably Wix, but you can
like,
explore.
Right, exactly. People like to have choice. So.
I was also doing a deep dive, and you've been in the marketing sector for a minute.
Yeah, pretty much. I've been doing marketing pretty much the whole time, with a little dabbling in catering. My first job was at a pizza place. I can still cut a circular thing like a cake or a pizza or something into 10 very even slices, which is a skill that I'm pretty proud of.
Served you well over the years, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean. 10 is actually tricky. There's a knack to it. Like you have to get it. It took practice. And 8's easy. 10's tricky, but there we go.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to see it in practice to know.
Okay. Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your, I calculated 18 plus years in marketing.
Why are you telling everybody about business out here?
I was just impressed. I was like, normally everyone's like a decade or they're beyond, you're in the middle. You're not at a point yet where it's like decades,
Man.
You're coming up.
Okay. So I've worked in marketing the whole time. I've done, some of that was like some intern kind of stuff, like getting started, things like that. Yeah, basically I was working with a local authority, doing like promoting loads of the parks online, and the events that they have in the parks and coordinating events in parks, and working with lots of partners who were also coordinating events in parks. And so that was really great. That was way back in the day. If we're really going to throw it back, that was back in the day when people were having meetings about like, oh, I don't know if people should be allowed to go to be on Facebook at work, and what is this Facebook, and we need a new strategy. And I was sort of in the vanguard of that particular team of being like, no, social media is actually useful. Like we should use this to connect with people and things like that. And also, and during that time I was doing a lot of SEO, but I didn't know. So I was doing like listings, for instance, for all of the different events and, content distribution, making sure that all of those things were there. I was updating the websites for that. We had over 100 web pages and I had to migrate all of them and change them all when we switched over all of our web pages. And I didn't know that was an SEO task, but I was doing that. I think a lot of people say things like, oh, I'm not a real SEO. And I'm like, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I just look after this like giant enterprise website that has like 400 blogs and I manage all of those blogs, but I don't know anything about SEO. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
I am a version of that person. I think right. I say it to you all the time, like, I know nothing. And then
I ask you something and you're like, oh yeah, it's like this and this and this. And I'm like,
It's because I started in social. I stumbled into marketing. Similar. You stumble into it and you don't feel that you have the solid foundation that people who formally learned it.
Right. But here's the thing. This is the thing I always say. I like in digital, all experience is valid, right? So I worked in that event space, but when I was working with the agency, I remember having a client who was working in event spaces. And I was like, oh, hey, I know how to put up a marquee. I had to do that for a job that I had before. And he's like, great, I sell marquees. So that means you actually know what I'm talking about. So, like all of the health and safety things that are required and all of that blah, 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 that's required and all of that sort of stuff. When you're in digital, and you see this all the time, if you're following social media folks, so Luke Carthy is an e-commerce dude. And he writes for the Wix SEO Hub. He was on our board, and he's that guy for e-commerce. And he will constantly be like, "Oh, I was on this website, and their navigation is janky," or, "Oh, I was on this website, and they're doing something really, really good." And I'm sure you must find this when you're like going around online, and you're like, "Oh, look at this campaign, they are crushing it," or "Look at this campaign, what are they doing?" And so I think you find that like while you're going around living your life, I always say like the other thing I say is stay woke, like with a lowercase w, like basically like pay attention to what you're seeing in spaces and what you're seeing people respond to. If you're seeing that your mom is sharing a particular meme or is interested in a particular campaign, like that's interesting, like particularly if it's somebody who's not super digital savvy, but that's trickled down to them. How is it that they found that information? How is it that they're getting that stuff? Pay attention to why that's happening, because it's highly likely that will be useful for you in your like more formal activity. I think it's really easy for folks to have imposter syndrome with digital stuff, because people will say, this is best practice. This is the way that you have to do it.
Yeah.
But then you'll see somebody else who's doing not that, and they're crushing it. You can see that they're getting like all the likes, all of the views, all of the rankings, all of that stuff. And you're like, but they're not doing that thing that was the best practice. So sometimes it's both a science and an art. And it can feel like, I'm not sure. But like, if you're getting the results at the end of the day, and this is the thing that I've always loved about digital marketing, and it's one of the reasons why I like firmly set up my camp here in my career, is that at the end of the day, the results really matter. So sometimes with general marketing, with campaigns, people will say, oh, I feel like I like this advert, or, oh, I feel like I like this PR campaign, or I like that thing, or I don't like this, and I feel this about it. But the thing about digital marketing is that it's like we have statistics. So
we have stats, numbers.
We have stats. Okay. So I'm glad that you have good feelings about whatever that was, but I have stats that say that Google liked it. So even if you didn't like it, Google liked it, and that's who I was going for, like, because Google's sending traffic, they're sending actual people to it, and those actual people clicked on the thing that you said you maybe didn't like. And so or you can say, hey, let's test it. Let's A/B test it. So you like this. I think it should be in blue. You think it should be in yellow. Let's test it. We will see what is and what isn't. And if it turns out that blue is right, great. Then we know that. Then we know that that's what the customer's like. So you can test all of that stuff. And it's like, it's a lot more, I think from an inclusive point of view, I think it's really valuable because you have some of those like data backed things to sort of drive through some of those conversations about inclusivity, to incorporate different ideas into your campaigns, to incorporate folks who are doing great work into your campaign. If there's somebody who's, and I've had this before, where I've been in a situation where maybe I was like the only person in the room from whatever, from multiple identity points, and at the end of the day, they looked at my stats and they were like, cool, what do you have to say? And I'm like, great, like, because that was the thing that mattered in that situation most, was the stats. So you can lead with that. You can be like, right. You can be like, so I like ranked this, and this. We lowered your PPC by 50%, like the PPC costs by 50%, and increased your conversions by 100%. So like,
actually, and you started a little bit on my next question, because I'm curious to know, what does inclusive marketing look like in the SEO space? Because there's a lot of times where people just talk about inclusive marketing in terms of visual representation, but SEO, from me outside looking in, is so much about the stats and the numbers and the words. How does that become or look, or what is the conversation of inclusion happening there?
So I think that there's a few things. So there's accessibility, web accessibility, which is, there's very clear guidelines on that. So at Wix, we have an accessibility tool, an accessibility wizard that will help you if you're building your website, and you can use it, and it will say, you need to fix this, you need to fix that, you need to do this, you need to do that. One of the things that's important about accessibility for SEO is that there's a lot of overlap between accessibility and SEO. So when we talk about accessibility in SEO, a lot of times it's to do with making sure that people can read content in lots of different formats, depending on their very often physical needs. So it might be that somebody has like a visual impairment and maybe they use a screen reader, or it might be that someone has like a small visual impairment. Like I have a small visual impairment. I should be wearing glasses right now, and I'm not. So it might be that someone has a small visual impairment, and so you need to make sure that you have like high contrast. So like you don't want like dark blue on navy blue, like a dark blue text on like a royal blue background. Like it's not enough contrast, people can't read it. And so that is good. That's good practice in terms of accessibility for people who have sort of visibility challenges. But it also is good practice because like most people can't read that. Like, even if you had perfect 20/20 eyesight, you'd go and you go, what is that? Why am I having to work so hard to read this content? And then you'd leave. Is the thing.
And then your bounce rate goes up, and then
Right, exactly. And then Google's getting signals that like, oh, people don't like this website, so maybe we shouldn't rank it so high. And so these are things that factor into it. Similarly, there's a lot of HTML tags that you can write in. So there's syntax that you can write and into your HTML that gives context to things that you're doing. So if you have an image, you can write a caption. If you have a link, you can write different parts of the different attributes to the link to tell people what it is. It also tells bots what that link is about. It also tells bots what that image is about. So that provides both SEO benefits because the bots are users as well.
Is there a difference between the way you'd write for a bot to understand versus a person using a screen reader?
Kind of. So it might be that for bots, sometimes you can just say that, that something's decorative. So maybe you wouldn't write in as an alt text. And then for someone reading a screen reader, it might be the case that you might shape all of your things so that they're more narrative, so that it works more with the narrative of the page. So for instance, if you had a blog that was all about a certain topic, you might make sure that it flows. So the Wix SEO Learning Hub has we have loads of blogs on there. Our editor, head of editorial, George Wynn, he spends a lot of time on the captions for the images. So that and the captions, they're not just like, this is a chart. The captions are like, this chart shows how the Google search algorithm does this, and this. Like he spends a lot of time writing out those images.
So he's explaining what the chart is, but he's not saying like, this is a blue bar and thing background. He's given context.
Yeah, he like writes full sentences about the things. So you can do that. You can do that in different ways, and again, it's something that you can test as well. So there's lots of different elements that you can add into your your SEO and your accessibility stuff, for instance. So that's something that's really important. The other thing from an SEO point of view is audience, right? So if you're thinking about inclusivity and in your marketing, and you're thinking about growth, if you're talking to the mainstream, for instance, if you're talking to, like, I don't know, the status quo, for instance, then you are going to get a certain level of traffic. If you want to create better user experience, very often you need to get a bit more granular. Mm-hmm. So for instance, if I had an ice cream parlor and I had a website that had ice cream, I might want to include some gluten-free ice cream, some vegan ice cream, some sugar-free ice cream. I might want to include those sorts of things, for instance. And that is getting more granular, but it's also getting more specific. So there's going to be people who are searching for that, and you'll find different cues for that. So when you're doing your keyword research, when you're doing your SEO research, so you'll find that people, you can see whether or not people are looking for those types of ice cream, for instance, those kinds of filters or those kinds of variations. Mm-hmm. You will also find, like, organic ice cream might be another one, for instance. I don't even know if that's a thing. It probably, but you would also
I guess organic cows.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah,
organic milk, ice cream.
Yeah. And like fair trade, like there's different variations. Okay, so let's get into that. So you would look generally at the sort of search landscape, and you can see in Google Trends, for instance, you can see whether or not vegan ice cream is trending, for instance, mm-hmm. or dairy-free ice cream is trending, for instance. And obviously this is a pretty vanilla category or whatever. I said vanilla. Anyway, but you can also look in your own search section. So if you have a search section on your website and you're finding that people are looking for, like, people are putting in queries for vegan ice cream and they're not getting a result, then you can either create a dedicated page. You can also recommend products for the team. You can say, hey, maybe we should have a specific thing that caters for this need. And then you're being more inclusive of those folks because you're using your search data. Again, data is your friend here. So it might be that you know, I've seen, for instance, like counselors, like websites mm-hmm. for counselors, and people are looking specifically for counselors for people from like Black backgrounds. So they're like, I'm looking for a counselor. I'm a Black person. I'm looking for a Black counselor, for instance. Like that's something that people sometimes do. Or people are looking for a counselor that specializes in autism, or they're looking for a counselor that specializes in something else, or they're looking for a counselor that, you know, that meets certain needs that they have. If you're finding that people are searching for that, then you can create dedicated content for that, and that will give you an SEO benefit as well as satisfying that customer need. So I think essentially what people forget about Google is that Google is not just sending people to websites for the sake of it. Mm-hmm. Google is and SEO is about delivering customer value. So it's about illustrating the value to the customer. So Google is getting signals from users who go to your website that content is valuable. So the more signals that you give them, the better. And if across your domain, you're including lots of signals that, you know, you have, that you're not only appealing to the top level queries. So for instance, like Google has head terms. Mm-hmm. So if you enter into something like ice cream, for instance, they will filter you. They'll be like, do you want an ice cream parlor? Do you want ice cream? You want an ice cream maker? Do you want like ice cream recipes? Like what they'll filter you, because ice cream, if you just put in ice cream in Google, it's too broad. What is that? Mm-hmm. Like sort yourself out. They're trying to help you. So if they find that you're just appealing to a broad thing and you don't know who your audience is, then they don't know who to send to you. Right? They don't know who's going to value your content. Whereas if you're getting more granular and you're appealing to a specific audience, which should include a broad scope of humanity.
It's making me think about because taking it from the ice cream to some other areas like clothing, I can imagine this is how a lot of stores determine whether they should have a tall brand or not. So Crystal and I were talking, we've not met in person ever, but I'm 6'3". And a lot of the time when I search for something, I either go straight to the tall category,
right,
or I type in tall X, like tall jeans, tall. And so if you know that your audience is searching for that, you're kind of like matching their wants.
Right. And and from an SEO point of view, that's brilliant, because if you type in tall jeans and next it shows at the top of the search, and next is like, yes, we have tall jeans, that we knew you were coming. We are ready for you. We appreciate you. We like we have a whole page that has tall jeans, and you get to that page and they're like, hey there, tall lady, we have tall jeans for you. And they're fantastic. Pick anything you like, whatever you want. And then you're like, great. And then you get the other thing as well, which is where like you go and you're like, okay, great, you have tall jeans, and you get there and they're not tall jeans.
They're like 5'7". They make it for people who are 5'7" and have a 33-inch inseam. This is a very close and dear problem to my heart.
Right. And I think that people forget about this. I think when people think about accessibility and inclusivity online and stuff, I think people forget about like there's lots of times, like everybody's got like something where they're like, it's not for me, because lots of things are manufactured. So I think like remember those things. Like remember when you have that feeling.
It makes me think of because Pinterest has rolled out their kind of search where you can search Pinterest based on hair texture, skin tone, and body. And it just makes me think of like, that's a level of inclusivity, but it makes it easier for the user. So it's like it's so fascinating. The question I had, because you mentioned it, would you recommend for people to have search on their website just as like a search bar? Because it's not something I would see.
Yeah. So I think it depends on the amount of content that you have. If you have 12 pages on your website, like you probably don't need to do that. Like people can navigate across your site or whatever. That's probably fine. However, if you have lots of content, if you've got lots of products, for instance, and I mean, we had this on our, as when we were putting together the SEO hub, like when we had like 40 pages or whatever, like you can kind of scroll through those or whatever. But pretty much once you hit like over 50 products or something like that, and maybe even earlier, like you definitely need a search thing, because like, ain't nobody got time to browse every single thing, to quote Sweet Brown. So like, it's very important to like, to just be mindful of your users, because again, Google is measuring value. So SEO is all about like delivering, like illustrating value, giving value to customers, and Google will rank you based on how valuable your content is for users. They've recently talked about helpful content update. Like they keep talking about this helpful content update. They just rolled out a spam update. They're trying to make sure that people are giving content that is useful, and that's not wasting people's time. That's the other thing. Like people have so much to do, so many notifications, all of that sort of stuff. If you've actually got them to your website, make sure that you're making them the most of that time, and they'll appreciate you for it. So yeah, I think that having site search, the thing about having site search is that it gives you insights into what people want and expect from your brand. So you can see which queries people are putting into your site search. You can also see if you have search pages, depending on how they're configured, sometimes they can rank. And you can see, like, if you're seeing, for instance, that like the tall jeans section is ranking as a search page, you can go, cool. We can now invest like some time in making a dedicated landing page, maybe doing some PPC, like maybe, engaging with some influencers or something, so that more people in this community know that like we have things for them. Like you're welcome, like you are welcome in our space, like, and on all of that sort of stuff. And I think certainly in my experience of, understanding like the various intersections of my personality, what I find is that it's useful to know that you're welcome. Like literally just knowing that you're welcome, that like somebody like you is welcome in this space, is important. So, like if it says on the website, like, hey, our place is wheelchair accessible, like, and it just says on the website, and you don't have to ask, and you don't have to dig around to find that information. That's really useful.
So if you don't have search on your website, is there a way for a business to know what people are looking for? Because like with the when I speak to people from the disabled community, I know they type in like wheelchair accessible buildings, and I recommend to clients all the time to just put that somewhere on your website if it's true and factual, of course.
Yeah.
But if you don't have search, how will you know that people are typing? Like, how do you find that information out?
Okay, so for local businesses, I highly recommend that you connect to Google Business Profile. So Google Business Profile has various attributes that they allow you to that you can declare in your Google Business Profile. So you can declare that we are wheelchair accessible. You can declare that you're Black owned. You can declare that you're LGBTQ friendly. You can declare that you're woman owned. You can declare like lots of different elements on there. So just go through your Google Business Profile and add those elements in. Also on Google Business Profile, people can ask questions on Google Business Profile. So when they find your thing, they can say, are you wheelchair accessible, for instance? And you can answer those questions on Google. And then when people are searching for a wheelchair accessible at a restaurant, so let's say you're having your birthday party, you're inviting your crew, and like either you or your crew or somebody, has a wheelchair. So you're going to want to make sure that everybody feels welcome at your birthday party. And so let's say you're doing that, you're going to look that up, and if it's in either the questions or it's declared in your Google Business Profile section, then it will be searchable and Google can point people in the right direction, for instance. So that's a really good one. And the other thing is like you can also do a blog. So for instance, if you were doing something, so if you had something that was like a dedicated service or something, things like let's say your restaurant or whatever it wasn't actually wheelchair accessible, but you had a dedicated service where it's like, hey, we don't have it in the restaurant, but we do on the patio, or like we can bring something out to you, or like, that sort of thing. Like we're doing our best. Like this is what we have. And again, I think that sometimes with things like that, it's just important to just declare what you are doing. You can write a blog on it. It doesn't necessarily, like, it's nice to have it on like on the homepage if you can, or like have it very clear, but you can also write a blog that explains like, how it works for folks or things like that. And you can include that in the blog, and the blog will be searchable. And if somebody is looking for that, again, Google can pull that through onto your Google Business Profile when people are searching on Google Maps, but it's also something that you can refer to people when they need it. So that's useful as well.
I think that's a really good piece of content because in Bristol, where I'm based, there's a lot of buildings that can't get converted and become accessible.
Right.
And that's a really good blog for them to write, to say, this is the journey we've gone on. This is where we are. I think people shy away from saying they can't do the thing that makes them inclusive.
Right.
But, yeah. Okay.
Right. Precisely. So like, and another one is like moms, like things for like, whether you have like we have a changing room or we don't have a changing room, or like we have a thing, or that sort of thing. So like changing room or like a feeding room or something like that. If you have that sort of thing, then it's worth just like having that somewhere. And again, even if you have it on your Google Business Profile, that's something that again, people can access. So just make sure that it's somewhere. It doesn't have to be like you don't have to take out a billboard necessarily, but if it's on your website, then it will be searchable when people need that sort of thing. And also, you can say, a nice one to be on the contact page would just be like, hey, if you need special assistance, we welcome all guests of whatever. If you need special assistance, give us a shout. Like, is again, it's just acknowledging like we know we see you, we care, and just let us know. So I think that's another thing that people can do. But the other thing is within and the other thing about creating a blog about that kind of content, or some content on your webpage about that sort of thing, is that, and it could even be like inclusive sizing, like that sort of thing. So like Sancho's Dress is another website that I know that has like inclusive sizing and stuff, because I've definitely been shopping with some of my like plus size sisters, and they were like, I hate shopping because there's never anything cute. Like I can never find anything that I like. It's always like awful. So like that there are websites that have plus size stuff, and I'm absolutely loving that there's so many like.
How do they describe the inclusive sizing? Because that one, for me, in my experience, I can find tall clothing and it goes up to like a size 16, because tall people are apparently all skinny. Okay. Or I can find plus size clothing, but that doesn't go tall.
It's not tall, right?
All fuller body people are short.
Right.
What is inclusive sizing for anyone who hasn't heard about
So
it?
inclusive sizing is so for instance, you see like ASOS has like ASOS Curve or whatever, which has like a sort of has like I think over 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Sancho's Dress, which is a fantastic business which you should check out. They've got lots of inclusive stuff in their things, also Black owned. Shout out Calcutta and Lagessa. She is so they have inclusive sizing throughout their things. But what's really useful is that like you can declare what that means to your website. You can say we
Okay.
have, so you can write a blog or something
And then
that says,
explain it.
this is how we do it here. This is what the sizes are. But and also like just giving people the information is really, really useful. I think that certainly like I have diet drama, like food drama, and stuff. And in my household, we've had food drama. So I have somebody who's gluten-free, but somebody who has a nut allergy, and things like that. So I think that like what I find is what I don't like is when you can't find any information.
Mm-hmm.
What, like, so for instance, if you're looking at these jeans and you're like, but what are the dimensions of these jeans?
Oh
And
my
they don't
days.
tell you. They just say large, small, medium. And I'm like, what does that mean?
When they don't
So
have the inseam, that is my pet. I'm going to name and shame them. Dorothy Perkins does not display their inseams. And I have ordered various things and they come in a variety. And I'm like, just put the inseam on there. It's a simple number. You know what it is. Don't tell me the height of the model.
right.
Tell me the
Right.
inseam.
Exactly. So one of the things that you get is that like if you just give people information, people will know what they need to search for. People will know what they need to get, like to be able to confirm whether or not something is good for them or not good for them. So I think providing information is very inclusive. Also, it speaks to folks on the autistic spectrum because a lot of folks on the autistic spectrum really want all the information straight away. They want to walk through. They want to know like what what's going on with all of that sort of stuff. So I think if you have the information available, then people can make intelligent decisions based on what they need. So if we're thinking about sizing, for instance, say, this is this kind of size, it's European this, it's EU this, it's European this, it's UK this, it's US that, this is the inseam, this is that sort of thing. So for instance, like I have big feet and I can fit a European 42 exactly, but I cannot fit, but sometimes people say it's an 8. And it's 42. And sometimes people say it's an 8 and it's actually 41. And I can't fit the 41. I can fit 42, but I can't fit 41. Sometimes they say it's 7 and it's 41. So I'm just like, just tell me what it is. Like, just tell me all the things. If you tell me all the things, then I can make a decision. And this is what's important, I think. So include as much information about your products on your website so that people can make the intelligent decisions based on what they need. You know which inseam you need, right?
And that's how we're becoming as a society. We are a lot more individualized. I'm curious to know though, because there's an element and a shift I've seen in the hair space where companies like Dyson and so forth are doing the right thing, making products that's accessible for Afro hair. But I'm not seeing their language about it. They're kind of just saying, oh, curly. And me, when I see curly, I am not thinking my hair kinky and Afro hair. I'm thinking, a ringlet or something. What are your thoughts on those companies just specifically saying made for Black hair or using those language that may not be, they're not a Black owned company, obviously, but to improve that balance of if you are not it, can you still use that language?
Yeah, I think that what can be what is important is to connect with those communities and to understand which communities are working with you. I know that Dyson has done it in particular. They've got that like the inverse hair dryer, for instance. I think it's like one where you don't blow it out. Yeah, it pulls your hair in, that sort of thing. And so I think that like with the curly thing, you could go okay, but like what you would also say is within the curly community, and I know some folks who are within the curly girl community, but use a lot of the sort of Afro hair, natural hair techniques, and there's a lot of overlap between the two. I watch a lot of YouTube hair videos. It's like one of the things I do on YouTube. And what I find is that like there's language that crosses across it. For instance, like there's curl type. People talk about curl types. People say 4C hair. They say 3B hair, like that sort of thing. And if they had the curl type, on there, then you would be able to know whether or not like that is the right one for you. So if they said this works for curl types between like 2C and 4C, and you'd be like, okay, cool. And like that
And that
like,
answers
great.
the question.
That answers the question. So I think it's really important that even if you're trying to be inclusive, make sure that you're using the language that the community are using, so that they can. And that again, that comes back to SEO. With SEO, one of the most valuable things that you get from SEO is audience research. So you can research the kinds of terminology that people are using to talk about whatever it is that you have. For instance, I know remember some, and this is a general thing, but somebody was talking about, oh, what's the difference between a gym and a gymnasium? Like, should we use gymnasium when we're talking about our fitness suite? And I'm like, no, because a gymnasium is a place where you play basketball. A gym is a place where you might lift weights or something. So the words are not interchangeable. They're different things.
That's so interesting, because to me, a gymnasium in the UK is where kids go and do sports.
Right, exactly. It's like a big room where there's like basketball or badminton,
no basketball,
or
like trampolines and stuff. It's really
the
American gymnasium. It's so interesting because then you go back to the location,
right,
of the audience. But yeah.
Right, precisely. So that's something that you can research, and you can figure out how your audience is speaking, which will affect how they will search, which will affect how you will rank and how you will perform on SEO. So again, like I think if you're using the terminology, for instance, that's around that, if you're using like say like 4C, 3B, et cetera, then that would cover everything. For instance, I know like I eat a lot of vegan food or whatever, but so there's a difference between vegan food and plant-based food, for instance. And like there's different variations between those things. And if you're going to get into it, do the research, do the research and understand the way that people are talking about it. And connect with people who are in the community. There are plenty of people, depending on whichever a community you're trying to engage with, there's going to be folks who are working in that community, who are creating content around that community, and you can see what resonates by looking at their content. So, Instagram is a great place for this. TikTok is a great place for this. But like in Instagram, there's tons of hashtags. Like on TikTok, there's tons of hashtags that will talk about various different things. And like I learned, I started getting more interested in like sort of Native American communities, and started following what they call like native talk or whatever is what they call it. And there's a lot of really interesting conversations being had there. And there's going to be things that come up really regularly within that community, for instance. And you learn more about those communities by getting involved with them, and like genuinely getting involved. You can be like, hey, like, can we help? Like, can we do this, that, and the other?
Can we engage?
Can we engage? And you'll learn the kinds of conversations that people are having, and you can ask questions, like, and you can ask questions, and you can do things like that. But make sure that you're using the language that you're doing. And again, one of the things I always say in SEO is like, don't just assume. We have data. Do research.
Okay, back it by the data. So don't just assume that, because the other thing that happened in the UK is there was a whole conversation about them not using the word BAME and what they're going to use. And I had this moment of thought where I'm just like, I know Black and brown people don't search the word BAME, but I know people who aren't that are trying to reach communities do.
Right.
So there's a misconnection in the word, but I don't know if those people who used to search BAME will know what to search next if you replace it.
Right. So I think that you sometimes get this with, and this is going to be from an SEO point of view, this is going to be very similar to like a rebrand, right? So what people will do in a rebrand is they'll say like, oh, we used to be called Twitter, formerly Twitter, now X. And by X, we mean terrible.
Terrible. That's the worst rebrand in history. Anyways.
But what people will do is they'll go like formerly, so they'll say X bracket, formerly Twitter bracket, and they'll go through that sort of thing. And so people will often, particularly in content, especially if something has like multiple names, and might have multiple ways of discussing it, will often say, this is coriander, sometimes referred to as cilantro. for instance, and then they'll go into to whatever the topic is.
Okay.
And so I think it's important to understand those like the history of that terminology. And again, that might even be like, for instance, if you were working in that space and you were creating a lot of content around that, or if you were creating a lot of products around that, or if you were being very engaged in that space, probably the thing to do would be to write a blog about the evolution of that term.
Mm-hmm.
And how you've seen that change, and then you can link to it then you can use that to link to when you're talking about it in different spaces. So for instance, you could say, and like, that's a great insight, because it's absolutely true that there's people who are working in spaces who are looking for that. There's also legacy content. So people will be talking about things will have been talking about, BAME communities years ago. Maybe they're not using that terminology now, but that doesn't mean that the content doesn't still exist, and some of it might still be useful. So if you have that as a talking point, then that's something that people can refer to, that you can refer to.
And reference back to.
Right. So I have a content that's like how to create user first. I have a piece of content on the Wix SEO Learning Hub called how to create user first content. And I talk about like making content that you will refer to, because if you're finding that you're having that conversation really regularly, what you can do is you can make a piece of content that says that, and again, it's not from search volumes. You're not looking at search volume. You know that people are asking you this. So you can say, hey, if somebody says, what does that term mean? You go, here's my blog, all on it.
Here's the link.
Here's the link. Here's all of the things that you need. And also, if you want to refer to it, you can say, oh, here's this, here's that. So those conversations that you're having really regularly. And again, if you're, and that's a great, actually that particular article is actually really useful for this conversation, because if you're finding that for instance, if you're in a cafe and you're finding that lots of people are wanting dairy-free stuff, then you can say, hey, and I say, like, one of the things you should do is talk to the people on the shop floor. If you're finding that the people on your shop floor are finding that lots of people are coming in here and they're saying that they can't actually access this, or, one of the things that's an accessibility point is lots of people are like, oh, our menu's online. It's like, well, what if people aren't online?
Or don't have their phone with them, or aren't able to, like, it's not accessible online in a way they can understand it.
Right. And what if it doesn't like work for them, or like, what if they can't, like, what do they do then? So, if you're finding that people on shop floor are like, we're having this issue, then that might be something that you could solve online or create online in a different way. Similarly, if you're finding that your sales folks are asking you, like, they're getting lots of questions about something that's a particular way, then that's another piece of content that you could create, or a product that you can create, etc. But again, if you're finding that you're having the same conversations about explaining the difference between BAME and BME and POC and all of that sort of stuff.
I just realized we said it 100 times. We didn't say it's Black, Asian, ethnic minority. It's a term that was used by the British government quite often. And then came 2020, like a lot of governments and a lot of places, they reassessed if it was appropriate to use the term.
Exactly.
For context.
Yes. It was a term that was new to me when I moved to England. I was like, really? What? Yeah, they don't use it in America.
What were they using? Because I know now is POC, people of color, BPOC, Black Indigenous people of color. What was before that? Was there anything?
People would just refer to themselves in whatever community they referred to themselves as.
My very British is like, were they not grouping everyone together? We were so used to that here in the UK. We were so used to them chucking us all in one thing.
I have no comment on that.
Oh, side story. But I remember it was a university that got called out, and that kind of started the thread where they were saying like 12 or 20, that their BAME student population had gone up by like 20%. And people were like, huh. But they had posted it in relation to Black History Month, and everyone was just like, huh, but you said BAME. And then they broke it down. It's like, actually, no, your Asian, and specifically your East Asian students have gone up, not your Black students. Why are you posting about it in Black History Month? It's still a good thing, but lumping it together is what, anyways, got them away with it. It's so...
These things can be complicated.
Multi-layered. But on an SEO term, keep it there, have your legacy content, and then update and change the narrative, and even have a piece. One of the things I enjoy about working with you, and when we've worked on clients in the past, is you can provide a lot of insights, but it's very practical and it's very staged. Like all of these things are things they can do over a period of time
Mm-hmm.
and like implement it. And a lot of it, when I'm thinking about it from the like social media marketer side of things, a lot of it leads to evergreen content.
Yeah, precisely. And I think that like, if, for instance, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, I want to be more inclusive with my, like from an SEO point of view, straight away, if you have a local business, the quickest thing you could do, like if you had 20 minutes, you could log in to your Google business profile. If you have one, I hope you have one. If you don't have one, then set aside another hour to set up your Google business profile, because it's absolutely worth it. If you're on Wix, we have an integration, so it makes it super easy. And if you're in the UK and you're on Wix, you can even get verified within your Google business profile super quickly. So like, that's how important we think it is. We've invested a lot in it because it's that important. If you're not on Wix, you should also do this. So basically, if you have an hour and you haven't done your Google business profile, do that. If you have a Google business profile and you have 20 minutes, go into your Google business profile and look at all of the fields and look at the sort of attributes. And I think it's under like special attributes or something like that, and state, whether or not you're like LGBTQ friendly or wheelchair access or like things like that. Add those things in, because that will make that will increase that will increase the accessibility, the searchability for that content straight away. That's if I had one thing that I would an actionable thing to give to people straight away, I would say absolutely do that.
I love that. So much of this has been very practical in how SEO integrates into all aspects of marketing. But I want us to venture into making maybe a campaign more inclusive.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of some, and now I've just got in my head an airing campaign. I don't know why, because you have, or you can pick a Wix related thing and make it more inclusive. But I feel like you guys probably do a lot already.
Certainly across our Wix SEO Learning Hub, like we have, there is an annual report about that Lydia Infante, one of our contributors, puts together around like gender inclusivity in SEO publishing. And last year, I think we came in pretty good on that. So I think we were, I think it was like 48-52 in terms of authors or something of gender split. And there was also another one from the FCDC, which is the Freelance Coalition for Developing Countries, and they did one around ethnicity, and we also came in well there. So I think we were top, and we were top or second. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we came in well on that as well. So that's something that we have done across our contributors, certainly for the Wix SEO Learning Hub, for instance. And then I think as far as campaigns, to make campaigns more inclusive.
I actually had another idea, because it's all coming to me. As soon as you said the gender split, it made me think of women in tech SEO.
Yes.
How about we think of a campaign for them and how we would,
Okay. So I guess with Women in Tech SEO, like it's a fantastic organization. If anyone is listening and they are someone who identifies as a woman and is working in SEO or in a tangential space. So if you're working on content, and you're saying, oh, I'm not really an SEO, you are, it's fine. You are, or you're working in social even, or digital, things like that, then join Women in Tech SEO. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It's incredible. You can ask any question in the Slack channel and nobody's going to go, oh, you didn't know that. How come you didn't? Like, nobody's going to do that. They'll just be like, oh, it's this. And they'll help you, because people help each other. And it's also like not one of those Slack channels where they're like, oh, join our Slack channel. And you get there and it's terrible.
Happening.
There's nothing there. And the people that are there are just posting like, look at this thing I did. Look at this thing I did. Look at our thing I did. It's not that at all. It's a great Slack channel. It's really active, and things. I think in terms of campaigns, I think they're really good at promoting lots of different folks from different backgrounds within it, and I think they're mindful of that as well. They have their London event coming up in February or March. It'll be around International Women's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we were to think about making it more inclusive, and I'm sure Areej will probably be thinking about this anyway, and she is very inclusive as well. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe it might be worth making a piece of content that was specifically dedicated to all of the ways that they make it inclusive. So the venue is the Barbican. It's super accessible for physical needs. They also have a prayer room and a quiet space for folks who might be like a little overwhelmed or might need just need a minute. Like, let me just like get some quiet time. So the quiet space is really good as well. They also have a space for like nursing if you need to do that. They also make sure that all of the guides. So I volunteered there last February, and I just spoke at the Philadelphia event, and in both cases, they make sure that all of their volunteers are very clearly marked. So all the volunteers have a scarf, and they all wear black and have a scarf. So if you need any help from anyone, it's very easy to find folks because you can see who they are, which is really useful for people who might need assistance, and also lots of other needs as well.
Do you see that as a blog or do you see that as a video?
I think that you could potentially do both. I'm a big advocate for doing video where you can, but I think that the good thing about doing a blog is that it allows you to update it. So you can have one piece of evergreen content that is like how we do inclusivity at our events. And then you can have a paragraph that's specific to this particular event. And you can have another one that's specific to another event. And it means that you don't have to redo that content. You don't have to do like our inclusive events 2022, 2023, 2020, whatever. Like, you don't have to do a new one every time. You can have one page that's like how we inclusive, for instance, and you would include that. So they have lots of they take lots of care. And I think that Areej, who is the founder, she's amazing. She's incredible, and she's very conscious of needs that folks have. Brighton SEO is also a space that's really that is also a team that's really, really conscious of being welcoming to folks with lots of different needs. So, for instance, they have a creche at their event to make sure that it's more accessible for folks. They also make sure that it's financially accessible. So they have like a ballot for people to get free tickets, and also they keep the tickets at a fairly reasonable price. As well, so that's something they do. They also make an effort to encourage first-time speakers to get involved with their space as well. So yeah, I think that for events, making sure that it's clear and easy for people to find out that they're welcome is really useful.
I like that. I think there's three pieces of content I'm imagining there. I'm imagining your full like pillar piece of content about, generally how we do it, how we do inclusive events, and then your specific venue, specific one. But then it's going to sound so cheesy, but I can think of like, those cheesy corporate videos that they do to show how it's like to work at a company. I can think of a corporate-ish style video if we specifically think about women in tech SEO, be like women who tech SEO and then the and is each bit of inclusion. So, and they breastfeed and work, and they do this, and it just kind of shows it, but with a little bit of like sarcasm as well.
Yeah. I think that could be fun. I think that could be absolutely fun. Definitely.
Because so many of the event stuff is just like, oh yes, here is our door, here is our thing, but it's just to add some personality to it. I think that'd be fun. Mm-hmm. But I like how you added all the layers because all of that leads back into establishing content that will be helpful when people are searching about your event, about your location, about your venue.
And I think the other thing that's really important is that like people think of it like, oh, I'm doing a nice thing by being inclusive. Like, oh, I'm so wonderful. I'm such a nice person. It's do it because it's a good thing to do. It's like, it's also a business thing. It's also like, it's also a business case as well, because like it's a deal breaker, right? Like if I have a crew, if I'm in a group of 10 people, right? And the chances are, like statistically speaking, you probably know this off the top of your head, but like how many people in 10 have a disability in the UK, for instance?
Oh, it depends on age, but it's probably like two in 10.
Right. Okay. So if you have a birthday party now if you're like, I'm just thinking about like an event or a thing, like if I like say I'm going out for a birthday dinner with 10 people, chances are somebody's going to need something, right? Some additional consideration. Certainly there's going to be somebody with a dietary consideration. There could very well be somebody who's got like, eyesight challenges, et cetera, et cetera. There's and et cetera, various different things. So if I have a situation where this restaurant or venue or whatever doesn't satisfy the need of one of the people in my group, the whole group's not going.
Yep.
The whole group's not going. And a table of 10, like that's a lot of that's a lot of money that you're missing out on because you couldn't help one person.
Yep.
And when I certainly, and I know I'm talking about dinners or whatever, I'm sorry, but when I'm looking for a place to book, so one place, if I'm looking for a place to like book a dinner or something like that, I'm always looking for the ones that cover everybody. So I'm thinking of like Oaxaca, for instance, is one that's really good. They have a vegan menu. They have a gluten-free menu. Like when I go to Brighton, I very often go to Oaxaca. And so they've got a vegan menu, they've got a gluten-free menu. They've got, they're ground level accessible, like various different things. And so I know whoever I invite is going to be fine. Right. So people are like, can I come? I'm like, yeah, of course you can. You can come. Everybody can come. Whoever can come can come. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I know everybody can come, and then it means like, cool, that's done. So I don't have to go. Oh, do you? Are you? I know they've got it covered. It's
and
fine.
There's so few spaces that are like, or I can't even say there's so few spaces. I don't know of any because the content's not there. They're not telling me otherwise. So I'm having to do all the search, and I get annoyed, and I go to, as soon as I find one, I stick with that one.
Right. Precisely. So I think that, it's a deal breaker. Like sometimes it's a deal breaker. It's like, oh, well, they don't have this. So none of us are going because they don't have this thing for this one crew, this one person in my crew. None of us are going. We're not doing that because it doesn't work. And we've had dinners for Wix at some conference events and stuff. Mm-hmm. And we invite lots of folks who from lots of SEO experts to connect and network, et cetera, et cetera. And there's definitely, whenever we look for whatever venue we're going to have, it's like, is it accessible for folks? Because like, even if there's even temporary stuff, like if somebody hurts their ankle or something and they've got to wear a boot for that, I don't want them to not be able to come because of that. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's important to make sure that people feel welcome and that people don't feel like it's like they've got to make it a big thing. A lot of times people don't want to make it a big thing. They just want to sit down.
It's so straightforward. It's like, I'm excited for, and this is where I see kind of inclusion in the digital space and the physical space going. More so when I say physical, I mean like printed menus and marketing physical, to become like how you just see the V and the VG and the GF on a menu. I'm excited for me to go on a website and just be like, oh, I don't even have to search to see if it's accessible. I don't have to search to see. It just becomes a thing that we naturally do. And I think marketers have a huge role to play in this and making it just the way it is.
Yeah, Women in Tech SEO in Philadelphia, I spoke a lot about media types. For instance, like in different media that you can add to it, like adding images to your blogs or whatever. It's also like really useful for connecting with different people. One of the things you're seeing really regularly as well is audio. So people will say, can I listen to this article? And that, again, that not only does that add like a certain content richness, but it also makes it more inclusive because like somebody who might have visual impairment will be able to access that. But also like maybe I'm tired, like maybe my eyes are tired from staring at a screen for ages, or maybe I'm in a place where maybe I'm out with my kid or something and I'm at the playground and I need to keep my eye on them. So like I want to listen to the thing. So you're creating more opportunities by including using more of these different elements. Also within schema markup, for instance, you can designate certain points as like speakable, or you can say, this is the place where people enter, this is the place where people enter, and this is the place where people can like find the customer service number, for instance, things like that. And that makes it more accessible in lots of ways. So one of the things that schema markup does, and if people don't know what that is, it's essentially it's a bit of script that you can add, a bit of HTML that you can add into the back end of your web page to make it easier for bots to understand different parts of your web page. So for instance, rather than having to read the whole recipe blog that includes like 250 words about like sunsets or something, you can just get the actual recipe for the chocolate cake in the schema markup, and it will pull out the ingredients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what Google can do is Google can pull that into the search results. So when somebody searches for chocolate cake, they'll pull out the important parts from the schema markup. Similarly, when people are using Chrome, you can change around your Chrome configuration on your phone or on your web browser so that it's more accessible for you. Like I have, like I said, my eyesight about 2 years ago just gave up, and what I have like a zoom thing on my phone, so I can zoom in on anything. And there's different things that people will set the text really big or things like that. So Google is if you configure your website with your schema markup, for instance, Google can help you to make your content more accessible to more people even before they come to your website. So these are things that you can consider all the way through, and that leads us to a point where like the information is just available.
Sure.
Like I don't mind if you. There. It's naturally just there. Like I'm like, as somebody who doesn't eat meat, I don't mind if you don't have options for me, but just tell me. Don't make me like sit down and like get all my coat off, and then I sit down and there's nothing for me to eat. Like, going
through the whole menu, looking at things and having to Google certain words. And like, is that what's in that?
Right, just put the thing. Don't make me ask, and don't bring out the ring binder. Like, I don't want to see your ring binder. Like, go away. So just make it easily accessible, so people can just know that it's fine. They're welcome. It's all good. We've thought of you. Like that, and that's that. And I think that's a great customer care thing. Like, if you care about your customers, like actually care about your customers,
and show it. Wow, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Please let our listeners and viewers know where they can find you on the internet.
So my Twitter handle, which I used to love Twitter so much, it's so funny now. Anyway, is Crystal on the web. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Crystal J. Carter, and you can also find me on the Wix SEO Learning Hub. So I write there. I also link things from there, and things like that. And I host a monthly webinar and a weekly podcast with Morty Oberstein, and we talk about search, and we talk about we get some great insights from some amazing SEO experts every single month. So do check that out, and on the podcast every single week. So check that out, and yeah, see you on the online.
See you on the internet. One of my favorite YouTubers says that all the time. We'll pop all those notes in the show notes, all those links in the show notes. Thank you for listening to Marketing Made Inclusive podcast. I am your host, Joyann Boyce. You can find me on the internet everywhere at Joyann Boyce. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network so we can all continue to make inclusive marketing the industry standard.